Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and a pleasant welcome to today's webinar. My name is Victor Hettenberg, and I'm the Business Development Manager at AMBA and BGA. Today, we will be diving into the topic of leveraging education technology to build world-class management education in India. We've got a great list of speakers today who will provide their thoughts and views on how business schools can improve using education technology. First off, we will hear from our CEO of AMBA and BGA, Andrew Main Wilson, who will give a quick overview of the current situation in the management education market as it relates to digital learning. After that, we will hand it over to Tatri Raman from SIA Trust New Delhi and Professor MJ Xavier, founder of IIM Ranchi, who will speak of the available technologies, the challenges of using them, and where management education is headed in light of the available and upcoming digital technologies. And then to finish up, Mark Stoddard, the accreditation director of AMBA and BGA, will give a short presentation on how accreditation agencies such as ours promote school investments into digital technologies and how we adapt to ensure schools leverage available technologies to improve learning experience for students. After the presentations, we will be having a Q&A session and a discussion for about 30 minutes. So please do feel free to leave your questions in the question box, and we'll make sure to get to them as quickly as possible. Now, that's enough from my end. I'd like to hand it over now to Andrew Main Wilson, the CEO of AMBA and BGA, for an overview of the management education market.
Thank you very much indeed, Victor, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to share with you what I've learned over these 6 months, really since the COVID-19 outbreak, what we've learned from our AMBA and BGA schools in this area of adopting technology and adapting to the virus. We're sorry that we can't be with you in person in India. Mark Stoddard, Victor, and myself were coming on a BGA promotional tour of India in March, but unfortunately that was obviously cancelled once the virus broke out and our flights got cancelled. We will be back in India, we very much hope, as soon as possible in the new year, early in 2021, or as soon as the virus allows us to travel and come and see you again. So, second slide, please, Victor. I'd just like to talk to you first about the size of the AMBA and BGA networks so you can get an indication of who we are and our size. So the first point is the AMBA Business School Network, which has now grown to, or will have grown by the end of this month, to 283 schools in 70 countries. And we're very proud to accredit 12 of the top 20 schools in India. Then secondly, there's the BGA Business School Network, and that has grown to 135 schools in less than 20 months. So we only launched BGA in January of last year, and we've been delighted with how many schools have rushed to join in that time. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit of a global perspective of what's going on. And I'd just like to show a research slide first, which is very recent research that we've done with employers, and we've asked the employers who recruit MBAs around the world what they felt were the most important criteria when looking for and recruiting an MBA student. And we were very pleased to find that to have a quality global accreditation of the MBA program was by far the #1 criteria amongst what was nearly 1,000 employers. 46% saying that international accreditation of the MBA was very important. And that was twice the score of the lowest item of importance, which was specialization of the MBA. So there's been an explosion over these last 5 or 6 years in specialist MBAs. Specialist MBAs, obviously in finance, but also in oil and gas, even in wine, in luxury goods. So it's the quality of the MBA and its international recognition that they regard as the most important. Now I'd just like to share with you some of my overview on the future of business education. When the virus hit us all, which hit us hard really in early March of this year, I said to the board of AMBA and BGA that I believe the virus would be a major problem worldwide until September 2021, an 18-month period, and really that it would probably only go away globally if, as and when a vaccine was found and populations mass inoculated. And 6 months in, I don't see anything to change my view. So I think that whether we like it or not, the virus is going to affect our lives all the way through until the autumn of next year at the earliest. So what does that really mean? And point one here is, what is the impact of COVID short term and long term? Well, across all our schools, around 400 of them in AMBA and BGA, there isn't a single school, not from Chile to China to Croatia, that hasn't been impacted by the virus. And I would make 3 comments about its impact. All the deans of our schools have agreed on one thing now, that we must never allow ourselves to be so suddenly vulnerable again. And therefore, somehow, with our teaching and learning, we've got to future-proof our universities and business schools against sudden future shocks like this. Secondly, it was talked about before the coronavirus, but it's becoming even truer now, that the impact of COVID and the advancement of technology means that blended learning for many business schools is going to be the optimum solution going forward. And even when the virus is gone, that this will probably, in my view, stay the preferred option. The third point is that people are beginning to realize that bachelor's and master's degrees are too front-end loaded, i.e. that too much money and too much time is being spent in the very early years of a career. So classically, your bachelor's degree from 18 or 19 to 21, 22, and then your master's late 20s, early 30s, and that education is coming in 2 large chunks. And what digital learning and online learning is bringing now, which is point 4, is a realization that annual lifelong learning is the smart way to move forward. So that rather than have a 1-year to 4-year on-campus relationship with your students, the first degree, importantly, is merely the start point of a relationship that if you manage it well as a business school, could last and bring you income and student and graduate loyalty for a 50-year career life cycle, from the age of 20 in first job, right the way through probably until 70, when people will look to retire. Given that many people now around the world, even in wealthy nations, don't have final salary scheme pensions and will need to work, even successful business people, quite possibly until they're 70. And then my final 5th point here is that what will happen is the business school reputation becomes even more important, because the top schools around the world will say our entire marketplace is no longer our global or national community, but our marketplace is students from anywhere in the world who might be interested in our online program. So I'm a Harvard Business School alum, and Harvard Business School Online is now targeting students in every country that can afford to do a Harvard program. So suddenly you find yourselves competing, or soon will do, on a global stage without the physical protection of proximity to your campus being the main requirement of someone able to come and do a degree with you. Finally, I'm just going to go on to 10 positive points, which I believe have become now the 10 online learning degree advantages, because there's talk around the world of some students complaining that they're not back on campus. But I think on the positive side, there are 10 key attributes which will ensure that online learning, one of the good things to come out of COVID, has probably been accelerated by 5 years in its market penetration of the management education market. So number 1, and it's the obvious first advantage, is 100% flexibility. The students can study from anywhere and at any time. And with so much job uncertainty around in these COVID times, that's more attractive than ever. The second advantage is program quality. Schools now are saying, look, let's take our MBA program. We've developed the online program, so it is the same curriculum. It's just the delivery modes that are different, but you are getting the same MBA. It's just the delivery that's different. And as a result of number two, the third benefit, and I'm seeing this in some of our European schools now, including Maastricht School of Management, the latest one that emailed me yesterday. The online MBA qualification is not being called an online MBA. The business school, if you do the online version or the physical campus version, it's still called the same thing. You have been awarded an MBA qualification. They're not differentiating between whether it was online or offline. The fourth benefit is one that's developing very fast at the moment from what was fairly chaotic, admittedly, in March. And that is now schools realize that the student needs to have a helicopter view on day one of the whole curriculum for the duration of the degree, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And then the top schools are segmenting it into neat modules and weekly assignments. So there you can see your overall online degree, but it's being broken down into bite-sized chunks. So you know how much work you've got to do over the next 8-week period. There's weekly assignments to keep the student engaged, and that builds neatly into the whole 1 or 2 or even 3-year degree. So it's becoming much clearer. The fifth advancement since COVID has been that the online learning platforms, which in some cases didn't exist at all, are being rapidly developed. And it's put something out there, get feedback from students, get feedback from lecturers, learn, fine-tune it and adjust it. And the online learning platforms are now developing very rapidly and becoming much easier to work with. And the fact that many programs around the world are going to have to be taught entirely online this year have really accelerated people's focus here, because they know that this is a big area of student confusion and complaint. The sixth benefit is how the one thing that online lacks is how do you bring a high touch experience for the students through high tech into these programs. And I've been really impressed with what I've seen from about 20 of our schools so far. They're making the online teaching as interactive as possible, so that there are discussion forums within the peer group, within the cohorts, with the professors, and they're sharing experiences, questions, debates, case studies. And then that's being enhanced even further each month with 1 to 2 to 3 one-to-one calls with the tutor or professor. So they're trying to replicate the care and attention as much as they can. Then the seventh area is the benefit of cohort size. And I'm seeing our schools going 2 different ways here. Some are holding and attracting very large cohorts, and they're saying that the benefit of this is you will have, although it's a virtual network, you'll have a much larger network than if you were being physically taught on campus. And some schools are going completely the other way, and they're keeping the cohort very small so that they can reassure the student that even though it's not face-to-face learning, you're going to get, because it's a small cohort, more one-to-one lecturer or professor attention than you might have got even if it had been physical. Then the next benefit is a really big one that's growing over time. And that is that with some campus lectures still taking place, the schools know that they can mix and match online learning with on-campus lectures. So if you take some of the MBA programs, the MBA is largely online, but if you can physically get to the campus, you're being allowed to join some of the physical on-campus lecturers, which are largely being held for those domestic students in countries that can still go on campus. So I've just had a call this morning with the president of the Bled Institute of Management in Slovenia, and all the Slovenians can go, Russians can travel, Ukrainians can travel. It's the rest of Western Europe and Asia that can't. So they're mixing and matching the staff, the students in a hybrid class. Then what may prove to be the biggest benefit of them all in terms of choice going forward is that as people are building their online digital stock, their inventory of modules, programs and courses, you will find that you have a huge choice of electives and that you can customize your own degree from the knowledge bank of programs within the school. And that is growing exponentially as every month of new content being created and then often shared among some schools who are now in non-competing alliances. So you might get an alliance of 6 schools from 6 different countries, all sharing digitally produced content. And then finally, and my last point for this morning, is that the cost issue, of course, is one that will attract students. Some schools are offering the online experience at a much lower price. Harvard are trying to charge the same price for the online MBA as the physical on-campus MBA in Boston. But in many cases, the online MBA is being offered cheaper. But even if it isn't, the lower travel and accommodation costs, if you don't have to be residential in that city or on campus, those are a guaranteed saving for students. So we think there will be, in time, a significant cost advantage for many, if not all, programs. So that's just me sharing some of the experiences that I've seen over these last 6 months of the use of technology in developing online. And I think that this has accelerated the acceptance of lifelong learning and online learning by about 5 years, and that once the virus has gone, the blended learning environment and the 100% online learning environment, which have become norms during COVID and will become even more normal with another 12 months of COVID, will have a good and long-lasting impact on the marketplace. But it does mean that each school needs to capacity build and build its reputation, because you will be competing in the global marketplace as opposed to a local marketplace. That's all from me now, Victor. I will hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Very, very interesting. Next speaker is Titatri Raman. Titatri, I will make you the presenter right now.
The technology, as we are talking about, the topic is actually leveraging education technology boom to build world-class management education in India. This was chosen basically to reflect what is going on now in the country. It's been, in fact, the COVID-19 seemed to have completely changed the scene, but it actually built on what was existing in terms of technology adaptation. India is one of the fastest nations, as I can see, to adapt new technologies. And it has always been doing that. And very surprisingly, I would see, like, for example, you take this particular secondlife.com. I don't know how many of you have really heard about this particular thing. And it's interesting that secondlife.com is kind of almost saying that digital and virtual life is what we offer. So everybody who gets in there gets an avatar. Avatar is your same name and kind of some kind of a figurine that will suit your name. And then you start working in this particular website as if, it's your world. So interestingly, this secondlife.com has a very, very large education market under its belt. And again, for your information, almost 10 years back, I think at IMC Ghaziabad in India, we did do a student case competition on the secondlife.com. So what I'm saying is basically that the virtual world is something which we are very, very familiar with in this country. And I just take one more example. Take, for example, this EC chair. EC chair is a technology which we have. If you look at all the academicians, most of them would be definitely aware of this. And many of them would have attended the conferences hosted by the EC chair. And definitely all PhD students would have used the EC chair as a sort of a conduit to push their papers up and down and get some comments off the grid. and so on. So EasyChair has been a very, very familiar sort of digital technology that could be made available to you. And of course, our great Moodle. Moodle is something that practically everybody and is interested in this particular offering, and practically all the schools have got it, and probably this is one of the first online freely available sort of technology that was used by the business schools. Once again, the accredited school PSG, I remember that we introduced this technology to them at the beginning. That's almost 15 years back or so, and 15, 12 years back probably. Yeah, and now practically every school in India is using Moodle as a platform. And of course, you have the other one, which is the Peregrine. Peregrine platform has been offering their online exams, and now the Business School Resource Center. So Business School Resource Center, for example, is a completely digitally offered cases of things which have actually happened about a week or 10 days back, and rather than the 2-year or 1 year or even a 5-year-old case that we discuss in the industry. So this is another technology tool which is being used extensively by the business schools everywhere. So it's these are the challenges. Basically, see, if you look at the future, and most of these are all familiar at this point of time, it's only familiar. But people have started experimenting with this, like, what you call artificial intelligence, robotics, VR, AR, or blockchain. All these things are being used by by the business schools which are interested in, adapting to new technologies. And they are anyway familiar with MOOC, that is massive open online courses. And once again, a very interesting example that one can find from India. This is actually a university called IGNOU. IGNOU is Indira Gandhi National Open University. Now, this National Open University had, at some point of time, nearly 20 million students. You're talking about massive, student cohort pool. This is massive, really massive. So we had an example of that, and they had lots of different kind of blended technologies to use, like satellite-based, communication. They had television channels. They had all kinds of things which they used, and paper, like posted material and online material. Then you have the emails and so on. So experiments of this kind has been going on very, very large scale in this country. So familiarity, it definitely has been there in education technology. And the technologies that are impacting the future education, which many of them are now looking at, Frost and Sullivan's recent analysis, in fact, gives you a very good idea of where exactly we are in terms of digitalization, connectivity, sustainability, and so on in the classroom. This is another major area. And now we have listed a few of these here, which are going to really make a big difference. And most of it is being adapted now in the market. Today, I would see that an estimate, kind of an estimate that is being made now is about $3.5 billion worth of online technology that are available in the education industry today. And experts are saying that it could be doubling this year itself. So we are talking about a $7 billion worth of the business here, and probably it might even grow more exponentially than that, because we are talking about something like 2 million schools and nearly a million colleges. And that's a huge amount of institutional industry advantage that we have in this country. So let's look at this. Artificial intelligence is now becoming a big thing. Practically every school is using this. Wearable technologies using RFID and other things for attendance and other things are going on. And mixed reality is the classroom. You try to bring in certain kind of images and things like that. Even on online courses like this, or even the webinars and things like that, there is a lot of possibility of using the mixed reality tools. And then, of course, robotics is coming in a big time, and there are a lot of experiments that are going on here. 3D printing is is touching the education world in a big time. And once again, there are a lot of experiments going on here. And of course, touchless sensing is another area. But everything almost sort of works on what do you call the online availability. See, one of the big challenges today in most of the business schools, at least in India, definitely is connectivity. Connectivity is a very big issue today because of the vastness of the geography that we have here. And most of the students are spread all over the country, literally. And once you are within the campus, there are some challenges, but without the campuses, as you are at home, definitely connectivity is going to be a very, very major issue. And that is being we are trying to adopt new technologies to make sure that the connectivity problem is solved. See, one of the things that institutions can no longer be choosy as where the technology will be adopted. In other words, the education technology has to be used almost any part of the institution's regular working. And new platforms have to be sort of seen and then adapted, and their adaptation has to be speeded up. So network teaching and learning is becoming a trend. And but the interesting thing, again, which I find personally, is that I speak to a lot of people in this industry now and then. And what I find is that the fatigue has already creeped in. The faculty are saying this, the students are saying that, everybody is saying that there is digital fatigue has already come. This is one thing which nobody really expected, that if you're going to be online completely, at least for a period of time until the COVID-19 goes off, you have to work from home. But then without anything to add to that, it's quite boring, and people really get very agitated and upset and so on. So this is one area of challenge that most business schools are facing, or for that matter, any student for that matter is facing the same issue. And I personally find, this is again, we started our work in 2008 under the SIA, Standards for Education Advancement and Accreditation. And we found that accreditation, even at that time, we thought that accreditation is going to make a very big difference in this country, because accreditation brings in the digital technologies almost instantly. See, for example, in India, when we had accreditation, the entire documentation, at least international accreditation definitely started out like this, was online. So which means you have to have some kind of digital familiarity with getting your accreditation process going very well. And most of the mentors who are there, they were all remotely only as communicating with the schools. And then you had the site. See, today what happens, the backroom processes which were gone digital even at that time. But today, interestingly, the site visits are also virtual meetings based. And almost all of them are remotely managed. So this is another interesting new development that has come. And most of the business schools, definitely my colleague Xavier would accept here and probably endorse me saying that most of them do have learning management systems already working. So which possibly would help them to transform very fast into the world of new technologies. And of course, we have seen Peregrine, for example, has, I myself have administered this assessment programs using this tool everywhere. So things of this kind is happening in this country. And what we find is the future. If you look at future, what Andrew said, very interesting points that he said about online and open learning and the future and the way the campuses are going to be blended. There are a lot of such kind of challenges are definitely going to happen. And so let's look at this. So from all these things, my personal take is this, that we need to have, every school should have, like we have in accreditation, we insist that you should have your vision statement. So here is a chance for the most business schools to develop a compelling digital vision. You've got to have a digital vision statement. You've got to have a new strategy and a clear-cut roadmap in terms of finance, in terms of hiring of people, in terms of, what new technologies you should be able to adopt and things like that. So for that, you need to have a good HR policy hiring new faculty staff with adequate, if not superior, digital literacy. And this is one area which, in fact, I must really appreciate that Indian Business School faculty have really adopted this new technology so fast. Almost all of them are using digital technologies very, very seamlessly. But then we do have, it's an advantage to have superior digital technology literate people in the market. And don't invest, don't hesitate to invest in frontline technology and new experimentation. And accreditation possibly would really help everybody in this particular area, which is what I find almost all the accreditation agencies that we are tracking, they have invested heavily into digital technologies, and possibly we even will be able to guide you through this. And of course, there is no point in reinventing the wheel. What is available, we can use. And ultimately, you should know that it is people and not just technology that matters. And we are not yet humanoids. We are not robots yet. So we are very much human. I think this is possibly the best way. Off to you, Victor, now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shatathri. It's been really nice hearing your presentation. Next will be Professor Xavier. I will hand it over now to you.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you, Andrew and Mr. Totatri Raman for wonderful presentations. Mr. Andrew beautifully brought out how, for example, everything is going online. And gradually what will happen is that we will have to probably face global competition. He was saying like how Harvard is offering the online programs all over the world, right? And for that, what really matters is your reputation and your accreditation. So you have to build your own reputation and build your credibility. That's what was his message. And of course, my friend Mr. Totatri Raman listed out how, for example, India is already tech savvy. The technology adoption has been happening at a very, very rapid rate in the Indian context. Of course, there's a school in Bangalore that uses robo teachers, and he was talking about artificial intelligence. Interestingly, I mean, the school level adoption is much higher than adoption in the higher education institutions. AR, VR, everything is being used in the even at the school levels. So that's what he explained, and of course he also stressed upon the need to really, have that human touch as well. So, which Andrew also talked about in terms of high tech and high touch. I'm going to take you a little beyond all these things. For example, once technology comes in a big way, what next? Next will be a digital transformation of education. So let me quickly take you through that. Basically, after the chalk and talk, the only major technology or innovation that has come into teaching is the PowerPoint. You could see all of us using PowerPoint. So it's nice, comfortable, but then we have to go beyond that. Now we are happy to see, for example, all these LMS, your AI-enabled proctoring tools, all kinds of technologies coming in. But we still follow the batch processing of students, which is typical of industrial age. In an industrial model, recruit students in a batch and then move them through the assembly line. Finally, you graduate them. But we are in the information age, and we are still using that old model. The other major problem is because of that, our hang up on this unit-based approach. Education industry is one of the least efficient. It has the lowest productivity, and we are still talking about one teacher for every 20 students. Now this is the biggest problem. Of course, Andrew in his presentation talked about how you can completely customize your education if you go online. So that's where we have to move into. And of course, poor return on investment for students also. What is happening is because we are inefficiently run, inefficiently managed, our fee keeps on going up, but with stagnant salaries. So what is the way out? What is the future like? What is the real challenge? So the question I pose each one of you present here is that can we not build a system that can offer customized, personalized education at the lowest cost? So this is where we are. Let me show you, how it is going to happen. Of course, some of the thinkers have been always talking about this shift that should happen, this digital transformation, because you can see that in every industry. If you see, Disney World. Disney World is, started with drawings and then converting into films. Today, everything is digitized. Imagine, making those films without, for example, your computers, your digital transformation. So entire process has been completely transformed. Education industry has always been reluctant to accept that, saying that, we need that personal touch, only teachers can do it, and so on and so forth. But where regulators have failed, Corona has succeeded in speeding up the digital transformation of education. So actually, we have moved at least 5 years ahead because of Corona. That's what Andrew was mentioning. Now, what will be the future like? Again, Andrew did talk about that the future is that you are going to have a student for his entire life. So if someone has a 50 years of working life, so till the age of 70 is going to be your student. So the future model is going to be, what I call the hop on and hop off model of education. So degrees will become less relevant in the future as compared to credits. You have to earn credits. You have to learn skills, acquire skills. The students will earn credits throughout their life by hopping on to education whenever they need and hopping off to employment from time to time. So you will be a learner throughout. That's what is going to happen. It is happening. And to make this possible, you need vertical and horizontal linkages between institutions and across institutions, and they have to be made across colleges, across courses. All that will have to use technology. Now that's when efficiency also will happen. So the what is happening is that ultimately all these will lead to Uberization of education, with clusters of institutions offering programs rather than individual colleges and universities. Let me tell you how it is going to happen. Like in the Uber model, what will happen is smaller colleges will get attached to a central hub. Like, if Harvard has to consolidate and come to all over the place, they can take over some of the local colleges, and then they will be available for them to make the delivery. And it is like an affiliate model of large universities, but the central institution will play a major role in shaping the local colleges. Local colleges will receive online classes from the central node. For selected subjects, local colleges also will teach for the entire network. So it will be a kind of a mix of these things. This is what will happen. So specialization and use of technology will improve overall efficiency and effectiveness of the whole system. So by doing this, you will be able to optimize on your resources, not only faculty resource, library resource, all other resources, and overall efficiency will go up, and you will be able to offer customized education. Interestingly, in the Indian context, what is happening is that we have recently had a national education policy 2020 passed by our parliament. This plans to end the fragmentation of higher education by transforming standalone education institutions to large multidisciplinary universities or higher education institutional clusters or knowledge hubs. I would say that this is a very, very forward-thinking vision that Indian government has actually come up with. Now, but it is also a big challenge for many of the standalone institutions. In the Indian context, most of the MBA institutions are all standalone institutions. Like IAMs, they offer only management education. So today they are saying that that's not possible. Every education, every college should offer liberal education. So a management student should learn also engineering, should learn vocational skills, should learn philosophy, psychology, and so on and so forth. That's what the government envisages. So what they are really looking at is a typical, for example, if you are talking about the BBA curriculum, the undergraduate curriculum, they want to make it all a 4-year curriculum, though they are permitting 3-year courses also. So there has to be a foundation where they should do courses on language, literature, music, philosophy, Indology, art, dance, statistics, sociology, etc., etc. Then they have to go into their specialization courses. Even during the next 2 years, they have to do courses from allied areas, courses from completely other areas. And then to top it up, they are saying that they should actually do courses on environment, ethics, sustainability, and also make them future ready. AI, blockchain, big data, all that should be compulsorily taught for everybody. Now, the beauty is that they want to make a holistic person. Of course, this is new to India. If you go to Harvard or even Oxford, or I have taught in Buckingham University in UK. All these places, they always offer many different courses. So from one college, you can go to another college, take any course. Indian context, we always have standalone institutions, engineering institutions, management institutions. So students never had the opportunity to do courses from other disciplines. So now the government insists that this is what you have to do. The next thing that the government of India is going to do is to allow for migration of students from one college to another college. Now this migration can happen at the end of first year, second year, third year, anytime they want, they can go. They can go to another college, or they can actually go and take up a job, or they can start an enterprise, then work for some time and then come back at any time. Now, amazing amount of flexibility that the government of India is trying to build into this. All these will require tremendous use of technology. Again, as you all know, you see, India has a social security identification system called Aadhaar card. This is the world's largest kind of IT system where, for example, identification, the information about all the citizens are stored in a central repository. So today, for example, they are trying to create a credit bank. So students can actually store their credits and then use the credits. So what happens is that it allows for beautiful flexibility for the students. So they could study for some time, work for some time, come back again to study, go from one college to another college. So this is the amount of flexibility that NEP is trying to build. And another interesting aspect is that what this government of India has done is that you form higher education clusters or knowledge hubs by actually collaborating with different colleges, maybe an engineering college, arts and science college, polytechnic college, law college, medical college, etc. So that this hub can offer, any student can actually, so suppose an MBA student, he will be part of your maybe your commerce and management college, but that person will have the opportunity to do courses from agriculture or law or medical or polytechnic. So this is how this education system will shape up. So there will be a massive consolidation and several smaller institutions may fall by the wayside. This is how the technology is evolving. The next level of actually educational deployment of education technology will be something like your artificial intelligence and other tools for precision learning. What is expected is that in future, just like you have precision medicine, precision agriculture, learning will also become personalized and customized. So the precision agriculture means, you for each crop, you exactly give the amount of nutrient as needed by that particular crop. So this is what is the new kind of a model where future will belong to those who develop platforms for customized, personalized, individualized course offerings using artificial intelligence. Now, for example, there's a company called Metacog in Bangalore. It's an app basically for IIT JEE coaching, which is available on Play Store. This completely customizes your entire IIT JEE training according to the individual capability. So a student will get, will be thrown at certain questions, and then based on that, the program will assess his kind of knowledge level in that area, and then based on that, it will build. It will give the other questions. It will train on other subjects. So if he likes, for example, magnetism, then it will give more of magnetism. So thermodynamics is a little slow, then it will gradually build him in thermodynamics. So education completely will be blended. It will be a hybrid kind of a learning model, and student will have the kind of a, the entire education will be customized. There's no point in saying that it's a 4-year degree program. This is a fixed syllabus. This is a fixed curriculum. It ultimately everything is made into some kind of a common units, and then the whole thing goes into a credit bank. This credit bank will have credits for your regular courses, your vocational education courses, your online courses, your offline courses, and the government is working out on a skill and knowledge equivalence framework, which is already there. So you will get a perfect credit equivalent, and then you can keep on actually learning whatever you need, acquire credits, and finally actually you qualify. And learning is going to become lifelong. So this is going to be the future. So your MBA program itself, what will happen is a artificial intelligence driven MBA program will completely customize the entire MBA program for you. So each person will actually receive a completely customized, personalized MBA program. Now, how many of the institutions are ready to face this kind of a challenge? How many of your MBA institutions are ready for that kind of a consolidation? So standalone institutions will have a problem. Now, to lastly, there are a lot of implications for accreditors and regulators also. For example, will they accredit a college, or will you accredit a knowledge hub? This is the problem. Because several colleges are joining together and they're offering a program. Now the boundaries are actually becoming completely broken. So one college, another college, the boundaries are actually very, very broken. So it is extremely difficult to say that where does Harvard end and a local college begins. So this is the problem. Again, the problem is student faculty ratio. So we are actually demanding that you need 1:20 ratio, 1:5 ratio. Accreditors, ranking agency, they all harp on this. But why do you look at actually input? You look at the output. So quality of output is what we should measure, and then we should work on that. And need to develop a robust skill and knowledge equivalence framework. That's a big challenge for government itself is working on it. I'm sure actually accrediting agencies also will face this. Finally, even alumni definition will be a big challenge. So a student started 1-year study here, then some credits he acquired in some other college, some credits he went and worked and then came back and acquired. So these are going to be the real challenges for accreditors and regulators. Now, with this, I'll stop here, and I'll probably, I'm open to any kind of a discussion and questions. Over to you, Victor.
Thank you so much, Professor Xavier. And there's some really good points here that we will discuss in the Q&A session. Before we go to the Q&A session, we'll have our last presenter, Mark Stoddard, the accreditation director at AMBA and BGA. And then I just want to remind everyone that you can ask your questions in the meantime in the questions box. So do feel free to leave your questions there. For now, though, over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you, Victor. I just want to say a few words about BGA's commitment to digital learning. And BGA really was designed from the very beginning to be an innovative membership, validation and accreditation system. So support for digital and online learning is really in our DNA. That said, we really only have selective specific reference to online, digital or virtual learning, and that is really by design, because we don't believe that online learning, technology enhanced learning, should be an end in itself, but it should be utilized to enhance the overall student learning experience. So there are some very specific elements of BGA within our documentation, within our processes, which do require some input into the digital space. In fact, it is included in one of the 9 principles of the BGA Charter. For those of you that don't know, the BGA is driven by its 9 points of its charter, which underlines everything that BGA does and tries to do. One of those, point 6, is about impact, innovation and excellence. And I think for most people, specifically in the current climate, digital learning really is at the forefront of most people's minds when they think about innovation in education. But also digitization can very clearly enhance the impact of an institution and its education policies. And so I think that that is really embedded into what BGA is all about. We also look at innovation and digital learning in every aspect of the BGA accreditation criteria. I don't want to read these out for you word by word here, but if you look at the institution section, we require that institutions have effective policies and mechanisms to promote and support innovation in learning, and with resources dedicated to that. And so that is a very important part of accredited institutions' commitment to innovation. In the section on faculty, we require that faculty should be committed to innovating in the classroom, and obviously technology is a big part of that. Even with regards to students, we expect that marketing and recruitment should ensure sustainability of programs and to ensure optimal numbers required based on the pedagogical approach. Particularly in terms of the program design and delivery, digital learning becomes very important, and we do require that an institution can demonstrate its innovation in program design, delivery, and the way in which that might promote a range of programs. And Andrew has already talked about blended learning, online learning, and the way in which those are really being driven, particularly through the current crisis that we are working through. And then also I've mentioned faculty and students, but I think it's also very important to mention alumni, and Professor Xavier talked about this in his presentation towards the end there, that really we also have to think about the way that digitization can enhance your engagement with your alumni, but also can enhance the services that you provide to your alumni. And in a lifelong learning approach, really digitization, virtual, online, is really the best way to be able to engage a wide variety of people who might well be working or living all around the world, and to enhance their lifelong learning experiences. And so there are a variety of services that BGA offers beyond just the accreditation service for enhancing digital and online learning, and I'll just pick up a few of these here. The first one is that we offer every member institution of BGA a free annual desktop review, and a school can use this for a variety of ways and a variety of options. It can use it to look at programs, it can use it to look at certain strategies, perhaps an internationalization strategy, but you could also choose to look at your digitization strategy and use the desktop review to do that. And so our panel of experts will look at documents that you submit about that particular area, and we will provide a written report which provides details on how you can improve in that particular area and utilize best practice from around the world and from within our network to enable you to have essentially a annual free consultancy on that particular area. If you want to take that further, we can also offer you a mentorship scheme within BGA membership. And again, you could utilize that towards enhancing your digitization approach. And so we would obviously work with you to make sure that the mentor that you have working with you has specific expertise in that area, if that is what you are looking for. And then thirdly, it's important to also talk about the networking element, and the BGA network is a very strong network, it's a growing network, and one of the things that personally I enjoy very much about working in this industry is that even though we are all competing for students, competing for market share, it's much more a collaborative rather than a competitive industry. And our network really is very keen and committed to sharing best practice with each other to make sure that we are all delivering the best possible education that we can. And so taking advantage of that network to share best practice on digital learning is a real advantage of being a member of BGA. So that's all I really wanted to say about BGA at this moment in time. Obviously, I'm very happy to take any questions that you might have on BGA specifically, either in this session or afterwards. I now hand over to Victor to hopefully field the questions that we've had from our audience.
Thank you so much, Mark. This will now be the start of our Q&A session, so I encourage everyone to leave your questions. But for now, I kind of want to bring up a few things that I thought of, and I want to get kind of straight to the point that you brought up, Professor Xavier, with regards to individualized learning. And this is, of course, a very important topic. This is something that will perhaps radicalize the entire industry in a way. What I wanted to ask, though, is when you go for such specific individual learning, one of the key, say, positives of an education process is usually that you are in a cohort where you can learn with people roughly at the same pace as yourself. Are we in danger of losing that aspect if we go into such a strongly individualized learning approach?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Now, there are different stages where, for example, this works very well, and also, for example, we are talking about a kind of a hybrid model. So we are not suggesting that to everyone you give a customized, individualized kind of thing. It's a mass customization kind of an approach. So you have at the early stages, you have a lot of these, what do you call that, batch processing approach. But when you go and take up a job and come back for online, future learning, you're learning throughout your life. I mean, that point of time, that customized learning is much better. So there are situations where, for example, it makes sense to really, learn on your own, learn at your pace, learn what you like. So rather than actually, going through a kind of a routine. So for example, when somebody is joining a college, I learn statistics. Okay, now statistics, there's a fixed 30 hours or 50 hours of actually input that is given to a student. Instead, you modularize it. This is some minimum amount, I learn. And then if I'm interested, I can do 100 hours of statistics or 200 hours of statistics. So we need to actually modularize and then allow this students to go for that. Certainly, I mean, what you are talking about is this group dynamics, learning from each other. For that, we have to create cohorts who are actually, in the same level of learning at different points of time.
Right. Very good. And in terms of, and this is a question for anyone here who wants to take it, in terms of lifelong learning, I mean, this is a very important thing that kind of latches onto what we just talked about. It's that ability to keep learning. How do you see that developing in the next 5 to 10 years? Will we see institutions being forced to move into this area, or will there be a bit of a backlash in terms of spending so much energy and commitment towards lifelong learning modules?
Can I?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Can I answer that? Yeah. See, frankly speaking, I think we have to approach this from the other point of view, in terms of the HR point of view. Where do you get your jobs? How do you get your career? And it depends on that, the learning actually takes place. The initial degree is something that will be the entry point to your job. But if you want to really grow in your career or your job, you need to have to add to the qualification. And so the way things are, the future is going to be very interesting by way of how the HR policies of big companies are going to work. How are they going to reward them? How are they going to compensate them for the kind of education that they'll be receiving? So to a large extent, the dynamics rests both with the employer as well as with the employee. So this is how the lifelong learning is going to be dictated too. Of course, there is a definite need for some at least to continue to learn, but not all of them. If they all of them have to get involved, it is going to be the other side, that is the employer side, which has to really come with that kind of a demand from that side. That's what I personally think. Yeah.
Great.
Can I also make one point on the thing about accreditation? I have my own question on this. I wanted to ask you.
Go ahead.
That from this discussion that we've been having in the last few minutes or so, it looks like the programmatic accreditation versus institutional accreditation that we generally discuss a lot about this, right? So the way things are, the way Xavier puts it, is that if it's going to be a program focused rather than the institution focused. In other words, a person is going to acquire his degree from different sources by blending all this, and then somebody is verifying it. Probably the accreditation agencies going forward would become that kind of institution who will first verify whether the person is really qualified or not, in terms of has he acquired the knowledge that is needed for him to be called an MBA student, or whether he has learned this particular program. So in other words, the second part opens up there. The second part is whether the program which has been approved and accepted by the accreditation agency can also be verified and then certified. In other words, the accreditation shifts away from institution to the individual. In other words, your the BGA, the member of BGA need not be institution. It could be the individual MBA student who gets accredited. I mean, probably there is some kind of a system that you would come up with where you can say that this particular qualification acquired has been accredited by, say, BGA.
Yeah.
So probably this is a thought.
Well, if I could just respond to that, Thafafri, I think there's two very nice elements to BGA that dovetail into exactly what you've just talked about. I mean, one is the fact that one of the key pillars of BGA is impact. And then you're looking at outputs. You're not really looking at inputs. You're not looking at the input in terms of the student. You're not looking at input in terms of the program. What you're looking at is, can the graduates do what the program has set out to do? And if you can demonstrate that and measure that and evidence that, then really what you've got is a really strong basis for saying this is a quality education. So that's the first element. And the second element is that BGA does have an individual membership arm for individuals who wish to become members, and they can become members for free if their institution is a BGA member. And so BGA offers a range of lifelong learning opportunities within its own framework, which actually work hand in hand, dovetail with lifelong learning opportunities that the institutions themselves offer. So it's a collaborative system rather than a competing one. And so I think, yes, what you've talked about is exactly the way that the BGA is trying to respond to those particular needs.
Fantastic. We've got a question from the audience here. And the question is whether free migration from one school to another school may have financial implications on institutions.
Yeah, can I take it? Yeah.
Of course, go ahead.
Of course, yes. Yeah, there is but in all these migration, the accreditation is going to play a major role. The National Accreditation Council is going to put colleges into three tiers. top tier, second tier, and the third tier. So migration from a third tier college to a top tier college is not going to be easy. That is one issue. But at the same time, government is going to allow 100 top universities to come and set shop in India. Once that happens, students will have the flexibility to move from an Indian institution to a foreign university. Of course, there will be financial implication. The fee structure, government is not going to actually regulate that. They are saying you can collect a reasonable fee according to your cost. So if somebody is willing to pay more, they can migrate to a college that collects a higher fee. So there is a financial implication. There's also these tiers. So you have to keep that in mind. So from a local college, somebody cannot seek admission into an IIM or an IIT. That is not going to work.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about faculty here. Training faculty to make them, let's say, highly qualified in the areas of digital technologies. This is an area that a lot of schools struggle with, understandably. Are there any ideas from your end where you could kind of promote this kind of digital, let's say, education of faculty to make them more, let's say, familiar and comfortable using various digital technologies?
Can I take it? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Victor?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you see this this adoption process, there will always be some laggards, and there are early adopters. So what we have done is identify the pro technology faculty and get them to use all these things. Then they train the other faculty, and then they get slowly they get used to that. But consciously now institutions have to invest a lot of money on training the faculty. But even after that, you find that about 15 to 20% of the faculty, still don't want to change. They take a much longer time to change. So those people, you put them on the research track. So they are asked to do more research, and then people who are conversant with technology are asked to do more teaching. So invariably, a good teacher also easily adapts to the technology. Normally, someone who loves to teach, they also learn these technologies faster. And the technology training has become a major part of it. See, for the present institution where I'm working, I'm the head of the Center for Technology and Innovation. And my role is to train my faculty. So constantly, we offer almost every week we have some program or other. We keep on training them. Any new developments happen, we offer a training program. It could be just a 1 hour program, half an hour program. Initially, we had a 5 days program for all the faculty. That's how we trained everybody. We have to get used to this. But every day, new technology is coming. New trainings have to happen.
Yeah.
I have a, can I?
Of course, Chandra, go ahead.
Yeah. My personal feeling here again is that just the way the students may have to really, your whole approach towards the student have to really change now based on the program accreditations one. I would also think that the faculty rating may become a big deal as we go into the future. Because 100%. So far it has been institutional rating. The faculty were assessed based on their annual performance and so on and so forth. But now with this technology of blended learning and people getting their credits from anywhere and so on, I think individual faculty need to have to get ranked on a dynamic basis. So there would be definitely ranking institutions would come up ranking the faculty, and probably institutions like yours, for example, would definitely play a big role in terms of ranking them on a dynamic basis. What happens is that a particular course you may be very familiar with and maybe adopting a lot of new technologies, so you get a better ranking there. or in some other subject he's not very familiar probably. So subject ranking, technology adaptation ranking, teaching ranking, and so on. So many parameters can be evolved to develop a ranking system for the individual faculty.
Yeah.
This could be a worldwide phenomenon for the simple reason again that in the Indian context, definitely there is going to be a lot of international institutions going to come in, and that means the faculty would be very diverse. So how do I, as a student, for example, identify which course to take, and how can I go take that course from that particular faculty, because I don't know anything about that person. So if there is a independent rating of that faculty and on a dynamic basis available in the platform, then it would make me as a student much easier for me to go and pick up that particular course. This will also apply to the institutions, because today, again, institutions are desperately looking for good quality faculty. See, the old system of a particular institution teaches everything from using their own faculty is going. Already there is a certain kind of understanding and acceptance that 20% of the courses can be taught by an outside faculty. I mean, the what do you call it, adjunct faculty, or call it, or guest faculty, and so on. So now it's completely different, because most of these courses might have to migrate away from the institution, which means you have to look for those faculty. So I think faculty ranking is going to become a very big deal as you go into the future. This is my personal take.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree with you, because just as you go and buy any product from an online store, you have ratings of products, ratings of the vendors.
Reviews.
Students will have the flexibility to choose the faculty, choose the courses based on some kind of an independent rating and ranking. So this has to be done on a dynamic basis. Already in some of the institutions where I worked, I introduced this system of collecting feedback from students on for every class. At the end of every class, they give a rating on a 5-point scale. So you have a faculty rated always. So when the same course statistics is offered by 5 different faculty, the student can see what is the rating of the faculty, and then based on that, he'll opt for that. Now, if it is going to be intercollegiate, then there has to be somebody like BGA, some independent agency has to have this kind of a rating made available to the students, and the students will choose the courses based on that. And of course, faculty pay will be commensurate with his rating, and he can reach out to 1,000. Yeah, faculty will not be limited to one institution. He will be available for multiple institutions, because we are in a gig economy. So he will be a gig faculty who will be available to multiple institutions, and his pay he can earn 20 times, 100 times more than what he is earning today. But that's a kind of a model that would possibly come up with this technologies and changes.
And if I could just add to the discussion, I think it's so imperative to have not just faculty training, but also to have support and have opportunities to share best practice, with faculty members, because a good quality online education is not just putting your lecture online. It's not just recording it and making it available to everyone. It has to be bespoke. It has to be designed in a certain way for the platform and for the pedagogy that you have and that you want to enable. And so, it's essential to do things in new and different ways, and therefore, people have to have support to be able to understand what the options and the opportunities are.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, I have one point for me. Very interestingly, that when we were doing the ranking, that when I started the ranking way back in 2000 in India, one of the areas where we really focused very seriously was the faculty, where we said we had 76 parameters gauging a faculty. I mean, just give one small example. If suppose somebody says that my PhD, I am a PhD doctor, okay, all right. So I looked at his PhD very, very carefully. There are 16 parameters from where we were looking at his PhD, saying that where did you get your PhD from? What was the last work that you did in your PhD? Did you do any research in your PhD after you got your PhD? How many people did you lead, and how many of them were actually in your area of PhD, and so on. So we used to ask these questions, 76 different questions. Now, probably things of that kind has to be removed from our list, and then a specific, say, for example, like a stock exchange, you can have a faculty exchange where the faculty can actually offer their services on an hourly basis. And that would definitely be, again, rated on a dynamic basis. So there's a possibility.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. Now, actually related to faculty, and this is, you brought up a very good point, Professor Xavier, in the terms of this is not only good for students in terms of their, let's say, highly personalized and, let's say, structured degree, you could call it, or education plan, but it's also very good for faculty because they can work together now with a lot of different institutions, and some of the best teachers will have the opportunity to be present at many different institutions. But then that brings up the next question, where if you have institutions from all over the world competing with each other, and let's say a lot of it is online, will there be some oversaturation, or will this be, naturally good for the market? What do you think here?
You mean saturation of faculty?
In terms of the business education, so if you have the same faculty teaching at various institutions around the world, are we basically are we somehow taking away a little bit of the, let's say, experiences you would expect at the various campuses? Let's say if you went to an Indian campus, you get a very different experience than going to, say, a school in Michigan, for instance, in the US.
Yeah, it is now. See, what is happening is, what is your unit of analysis? Unit of analysis was a college. Now unit of analysis is a faculty. So if you take, I go to Harvard, but even in Harvard, not all professors are very good. So now as a student, I have a choice. I will attend Michael Porter's course in Harvard, and I'll take some other professor in London Business School, and I'll go to another professor in IIM Ahmedabad. So we have to give the benefit to the student. So he has the option of mixing and matching and making up his own credits. So it doesn't matter. So he pays a differential tuition fee to different faculty. So his course may be little heavily priced, another course may be. So he's priced based on the market. I mean, these are things which should happen. If it happens, then for example, you're you don't need so many faculty. You can do the entire teaching, lesser faculty but high quality faculty who can reach out to very large number of people. And they can also, if somebody is willing to pay very high tuition fee, he will do a private tuition to somebody. That's also possible.
That reminds me a little bit.
I can have a private.
It reminds me a little bit of how it used to be. If you go back to, say, the ancient Greek times, you would have your, specific tutor.
Exactly.
And you did bring up the point of, the Industrial Revolution, how that brought us into batches and cohorts.
Yes. Now it will go back to the olden days where, for example, you can have a private tutor. So the private tutor need not be a physical tutor, because they will then have a humanoid, cloned, which will actually offer you customized education. So the humanoid of Michael Porter or some top professor will be teaching everywhere. So the cost will come down. So it is at the advanced level for a doctoral program, for a PhD work, then you have to work one-on-one with that professor. But otherwise, a lot of these things will get automated and modularized.
So I've got a question.
Things are happening.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. So
can I say?
Yeah, of course.
This in fact very, very exciting thing about this is that the institution which will finally decide that this guy has got a good quality faculty or not, I think that's going to be a major thing. The institution has to now develop processes by which you can assess a particular course, which the person says that I'm an MBA, for example. He comes and says, I'm an MBA. Before I say that he's an MBA, As an institution, I have to assess them. Probably 2-3 weeks of somebody staying in one particular one campus, and which panelists of different kinds from different industries would be able to assess this person's real worth and so on, and then finally awarding the MBA. So I think the way the future would probably be that there will be very specialized institutions to even assess whether the quality of this faculty, I mean, quality of the student is really good or not, whether he has really acquired the necessary qualification or not. Probably 50% of the panel might have HR of different companies sitting there rather than the faculty. There could be people who will hire. Those are the guys who will be sitting and looking at this person. It's almost like a job interview. So I don't know. The future is going to be pretty exciting here as you see that the future institution which will assess or rate the students of the MBA program is going to be. So a completely new kind of school will emerge now. Yeah.
Very interesting. And last question for the day, what we have room for. Here it says, each institution has a value system and unique belief system and pedagogy. The magic is the delivery in the classroom and peer-to-peer learning. This is not possible online. So how do you scale a physical faculty to be available across the world?
Yeah, see that's a technology part of it. So you are able to use the same assembly line and then produce cars which are custom built. So it will actually, technology will provide that magic. So your ultimately the models are changing. So we are looking at the school, we are looking at its culture, its this thing, etc. But then what the industry wants is what skills you bring to table. Now for that, I don't need a degree. I don't need an institution. I, as an individual, a student, I need to acquire this skill. Am I providing it? That's all. Whoever provides it, I'll go and take it there. I mean, so institutions will become less relevant, but ultimately the skills what you offer, that's what will really matter. So today, Google, many organizations have done away with actually this degree verification, everything, and they hire you if you have the right skills. And so when degrees become less relevant, automatically other things also change. The entire paradigm changes.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything on to that?
Yeah, I want to say something. Yeah, what Professor Xavier said is the individual rather than the institution is going to matter in the future. The technology is going to make that difference. The individual, whether the person has got the skill or not. Interestingly, again, from an employer's perspective, if you really want this person to do continuous learning, then you have to challenge this person on a continuous basis. In other words, if the employer is going to, for example, accept and adopt a certain new technology, you would expect the people who are down the line, they have to learn that particular technology, which in other words would be offered by a very specialized institution. So this business of the individual continuously learning is definitely going to be the future from education perspective. How various institutions will dovetail to this particular change is something which is of a great challenge to people. One thing which is very, very clear is that, say, 5 to 10 years down the line, most of the so-called brands, quote unquote, today, based on their brand equities, based on certain other things, will not exist anymore. Their brand equity will be on the skills and the kind of relevance that they have for their education. That is what's going to be the brand equity. So I think BGA type of institutions will play a very, very important role. All accreditation agencies will definitely play an important role here in making this happen. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mark or Andrew, do you guys have any remarks on that?
I'll just add that I think going back to what I was saying earlier, that it's about developing a bespoke program or a bespoke delivery that really, yes, I think it's very difficult to sort of recreate the peer-to-peer learning that is such an important part of particularly management education at the postgraduate level. But it can be done. It's not easy. It's not cheap. And I think that's what a lot of people would have worked out even before the COVID situation. But it is possible if you approach it in the right way, and you invest in it both in terms of time and money to do so. So I think yes, it's about making sure you're not just doing what you've been doing all the time and just putting it online. It's about trying to find ways to replicate as best as possible the peer-to-peer and the individual learning experience, because I think certainly one of the things that I think a lot of us are finding is that the technology is not quite as good as being in a classroom and being sort of in a room with someone, but it's 90 to 95% as good, and if that's good enough, then that's going to be the way forward.
And I would just add, Victor, that this is a great opportunity for India, because one of the reasons some countries and some cities around the world are going to struggle is that this serious technology investment needs scale. And one of the things that India has got in spades is huge scale of students. And I think the exciting challenge for the best Indian schools is to be in that small cluster at the top of the quality market in India. We know that there are hundreds, if not thousands schools, but not that many that have got a highly respected brand name around the world. And I think what I'd encourage the schools today is this is a great opportunity for you to further strengthen your position at the top of the quality group of Indian schools.
Wonderful. Well, we're out of time, but I can assure everyone you will receive copies of the slides from the presenters who had them, and we will have a copy of this webinar in case you want to share it with any of your colleagues or want to watch it again. You will have that opportunity. But for now, I'd like to thank all of you for coming on to this webinar. It's been a real pleasure to having you on board. Thank you for the good questions. To the panelists, all of you have been great. Thank you so much for the fantastic presentations, and we hope to do this again shortly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.